What is up, everyone? Mr. Thumb coming at you with a little bit of a different stream today. Jesus Christ, that music is super loud in my ears. Turn that right the fuck down. Alright, there we go. So what is up, everyone? For anybody tuning in right at the beginning here, Dragon's Dogma 2 dropped the other day. To not very good reviews. I had pre-ordered it myself, and you know, after Cyberpunk, I told myself that I would never pre-order a game again for obvious fucking reasons. And then, you know, Capcom had me lulled into this sense of security. It's like, for the last good while, it was like Capcom just could not fucking miss, you know? World, Rise, there were some mixed reviews about Rise, but I thought Rise was fucking solid. And then, you know, Dragon's Dogma 2 got announced a little while back, and I was on board. I was a huge fan of the first one. I played it through a few times at this point. And I knew that they were going to be ambitious with number 2. I knew that. But I didn't realize how ambitious they were going to be. And how they had very clearly run out of time when they released the PC port. You've heard it all already. If you've made it to my stream, there's no fucking way you haven't heard every other Capcom related creator talking about, oh, the microtransactions and oh, the performance issues. And that's where I'm sitting right now. I'm gonna be honest, I don't give one single solitary fuck about the microtransactions. Do I think they're good? No, not really. But I also know that I vote with my dollars and I choose not to engage with them. And if I'm being real honest, if somebody did pay for them, I'm kind of alright with people paying a stupid tax every now and then. All of that stuff is immediately available within an hour of main gameplay, maybe 2. So if you are buying those to get a head start on a single player game, then yeah, I think you paid the stupid tax. Well, that's all I'm gonna say about it. I'm not gonna sit here and harp on it. This is a horse that's been beaten to death and back already. Everybody has their own opinions, and no one's gonna be breaking any ground with this. The performance issues, though, I think that is a real problem. There's no world where this should have been released in the state that it's in. I'm not running a shitty rig by any means, but I'm not running an amazing rig either. I have a Core i7 with a 2070 in my gaming rig. Nothing crazy. Enough to run most games reasonably well. But not, you know, I'm not running 4K anything. But how do I put this? So it is technically, in the most sensible, in the most literal sense of the word, it is technically playable. If you really want to, if you're running a similar rig to me, if you're running a 3060, got a 1080, 2070, yeah, game will run. It'll run in the wilderness. When you're not in a main city, it'll run just fine. You'll have some stuttering and stuff, but nothing game-breaking. But it is nauseating to play in the city, at least for me. Like I said, it's another thing that's been beaten like a dead horse at this point. It's CPU bound heavily in the main cities. Capcom has put out a statement about it. It looks like, I mean, obviously they're aware. It would have to be super incredibly dense to not have figured it out at this point. But we're gonna go over that real quick. So let's have a look here. Hang on, okay. Switching over. This is the patch notes that they put out. I don't think that this patch has come out just yet, but this is the plan. Yeah, we're planning over here on the right. My face is covering it up, so, you know, take my word for it. We're planning to release these patches, including the following updates and fixes in the near future, and we'll release them as soon as they are ready for distribution on each platform. Thank you for your patience and support. So, jumping over to the actual patch notes. Adding the option to start a new game when save data already exists. Fucking duh. It's amazing that it released without this. It seems like it's one of those things where they were definitely out of time, and they just made the active decision to not do this in lieu of doing something else. Companies have deadlines to meet. I guess I kind of get that. I'm not gonna knock that one too hard. Of the things, especially on PC, where people have access to their actual root files and stuff for the game, not that big of a deal. Kind of shitty, but, you know, 10 minutes of Googling and you can figure out how to do it. Excuse? No. Workable? Yes. Item number 2, and this is back to the all platforms, PS5, Xbox, and Steam. Changing the number of Art of Metamorphosis Art of Metamorphosis items available at pawn guilds in the game to 99. They're basically just saying here, hey, you'll be able to change your character infinitely. Cool. I think you could only buy like 1, 2, or 3 of them. I can't remember exactly what. I used 1 on my very first playthrough because I fucked up the way my character walks so bad. And that was about it. So you won't be buying a whole lot of these, usually. Making the quest that allows player to acquire their own dwelling where they can save and rest available earlier in the game. Honestly, I didn't think that this was a huge issue. That seemed reasonable where it was at. Miscellaneous text display fixes, whatever. Miscellaneous bug fixes, unless that bug is dropping to 15 FPS in city, then that's not really very important. PS5 and Xbox Series X. Adding the option to switch motion blur on or off. I don't know why that wasn't in there. I think that probably falls in the same camp as the letting players start a new game when there's already save data. Probably just one of the things that they chose not to do instead. Adding options to switch ray tracing on or off. I can't believe that there's an option for ray tracing on a console. I didn't know that was a thing. Yeah. Adding options to set frame rate to either variable or max 30 FPS and options. Same thing. I think they ran out of time. And updates for Steam. Improving quality when DLSS super resolution is enabled. I feel like this is also kind of a non-issue in terms of performance. I feel like they're kind of just throwing us a bone with these, a lot of them. Just to say, hey, we hear you, we're fixing what we can right now. And then finally, fixing an issue where models appear low quality under some specific settings. If those settings are any, and while you're in city, and anything other than a very absolute top of the line CPU, then awesome. If not, it's probably not what the player base is looking for at this point in time. Yeah, I was super pumped to play this game. If I'm being honest, I'm enjoying the game. The story's cool. It's Dragon's Dogma. I'm gonna like it. I'm gonna be a stan for this game. But it is unplayable as a streamer, at least for me and my rig. I see Asmongold running it. I see Charlie doing bits and pieces. For me personally, my budget, my rig, it's just not possible. I would love to find a way to make content with it, but the only way that I could do content with it would be to be exclusively fights outside of cities where I'm getting over 30 FPS, which is reasonable, but there's no way I can stream that. Every time I have to go to the city, my stream quality is going to tank to the point where I wouldn't want to watch it, so I can't, in good faith, give that back to you guys and just be like, here, you know, you'll take this shit quality stream and you'll enjoy it. I can't do that. So switching back here. Ooh, too much of my face. That's better. So that's where we're at. For the time being, I'm gonna be going back to streaming Monster Hunter. Until Capcom gets these performance issues sorted out, or until I get a bigger rig, we're probably gonna be streaming Monster Hunter for the foreseeable future. I'm probably gonna try to release a couple of little bits of Dragon's Dogma related content here and there, but doing that as the main spiel of the channel for right now is just not gonna be in the cards. So, with all of that said, I feel like I have once again beaten the dead horse as dead as the dead horse can get. Let's jump into some content. Hey, Clyde's here, and I do not have the Clyde cam set up. I'm sorry, buddy. We went out of town over the weekend, so I took my camera rig that would normally hold Clyde's camera with us. Oh. Boop. All right, off you go, buddy. I know you don't want to be held. Yeah. Scooch. Scooch. Scooch your butt. Thank you, sir. All right. So let's switch the music off. And camera one. Ray, I see you in there. I'm finished with my monologue. I appreciate you dropping by as always. Okay. Here we are. Back at it. Right. So, I feel like I've yapped enough at this point. Let's see what's up with some Monster Hunter content. What's up, Clyde? Buddy, I would love to put you on camera, but I just do not have your camera set up. I'm sorry. I know. You're the one that people come to see. I don't know what I'm thinking. Don't nobody come here to see me. That's for goddamn sure. It's for you. It's always. Every time. Always for you, buddy. All right. Oh, also, I'm going to be putting out a short video some point this week. Not sure when yet. But I'll be putting out a short 5, maybe 10-minute video, giving like a brief rundown of what Dragon's Dogma 2 is going to look like if you're running a similar rig to me. I feel like this is a pretty average rig for people to have. A few years ago, it was pretty ballin'. At this point, not so much. So, yeah, I'll be putting that out at some point this week. We'll have some... not benchmarks. That's a generous term for what I did. Screenshots of what FPS I'm getting in different situations. And I'm gonna see if I can get some friends who are running different rigs to also send me some screenshots of what their FPS and stuff is looking like in different parts of the game. We'll put all that together into a quick little hodgepodge and see what comes of it. In the meantime, I wonder if there's anybody left in these lobbies. Hop on to SOS. Ooh, Stygian's an ogre. No. Yeah. Ode to Destruction. That sounds like fun. Let's get some Ruin or Nergigante up in here. Change equipment. We want our raw dragon build. Oh man. Gotta get used to the change of pace of this game again. I've been playing Dragon's Dogma for the past couple of days, so it's got my sense of everything just a little bit warped. Alright. Also, cheers. I made a fancy drink tonight. There we go. There's the music. I was wondering. Bam! Bam! Seems like we got a decent little team with us today. We already got one of his horns off. Yeah, we're gonna put this one down. I wonder if I can get a mount out of this. I don't think somebody's already got them out, right? No. Or maybe somebody did. Come on, I really want that mount. Or not. Oh, there it is. I was thinking I was getting off pretty lucky with a bunch of those shots. Ooh. Both horns off. We still got a tail. Yeah, he's still got a tail, but not for long. We're gonna fix that. Maybe. If it'll stand still long enough. Ouch, kabibbles. See what we can do for the rest of the team here. The old demon powder. Told you that tail wouldn't be there for long. Ow! Shit. Fuck you. Ooh. Ouch, kabibbles. Oh, I helped. All right. Oh, the Naruto run. Did she just punch me? That's funny. We have. All right. What's next? What's next? Max. Oh no. Do I have stuff to make it? I do. Okay. Now what? Let's see what we got. Blue Rathalos, Stygian's an ogre. Not gonna lie.
Striking its head should be effective in weakening its powerful breath attack. Make use of the ballistae and cannons!
Welcome back to another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Just a few years ago, I'd have told you this isn't going to happen, but it's here. I'm playing it. It's Dragon's Dogma 2, against all odds. The original game from 2012 is a deeply weird, kind of janky experience that was begging for a more refined follow-up that never really materialized until now, almost 12 years later. Capcom could have easily taken the safer route and turned this into a medieval fantasy-themed Monster Hunter game, but instead they made a relentlessly faithful follow-up to the original that is still a little weird and a little janky, but utterly enthralling. It is not a perfect game, but Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of the most intriguing and exciting AAA games I have played in a very long time. There are things about this game that some people are going to hate for sure. It's got some obtuse quests, some pretty oddball gameplay systems that go relatively unexplained, some inconsistent frame rate, and extremely low-key opening hours. But in a lot of ways, this is kind of the anti-AAA. It zigs where most games zag. And while that may be disorienting for some out there, I'm going to say I really like it. So what the hell even is this game? It's hard to explain if you haven't played the first one. If you have, it's like that. It's an action RPG where you make your character, pick a class, and explore a big open world. On the most basic level, it sounds indistinguishable from most high-profile action RPGs, but this game, it's really not exactly like anything else out there. The combat's a little like Monster Hunter, where a lot of the beasts you take on are these gigantic enemies that you can climb on, target weak points, etc., but instead of going it alone or with a party of other players, Dragon's Dogma has you team up with 3 pawns. These are AI-controlled allies that have their own complex rules governing their behavior. There is no multiplayer in this game, so if that's what you're looking for, you're not going to find it. I would argue there's plenty of other things to look for, though. There's the quests, which tend to be very open-ended, and the extremely systematic game world with day and night cycles and NPCs with schedules. It's sort of like Monster Hunter had a weird baby with Skyrim, but I don't know that accurately captures how odd this game is. It's one of those things where you just have to play it or at least see it for a while to get what's really going on. Unlike the first game, which took way too long to get you into the open world, this one starts with a short prologue where you create your character using the game's frankly really impressive character creation tools, and then pretty well drops you into the game. If you so desire, you can totally ignore the main quest and start exploring in random directions. It's up to you. As an example of just how open this game can be, there's a quest where this soldier is escorting you back to the capital. In any other game, this would be some scripted thing where you're forced to follow this guy, but there's nothing stopping you from going off the beaten path and getting him killed by mistake. And if you fail the quest, there's no restarting. You just have to make your way to the capital on your own. Later on, there's a gate that keeps you from entering a southern section of the map, In any other game, this would be locked by plot progression, but in Dragon's Dogma 2, there's other ways of getting past. There's just a level of freedom you rarely see in a game that is on this scale. There's multiple ways to resolve quests. You can access certain locations earlier than you're supposed to. You can kill plot critical characters, and everything just keeps going. The actual presentation on all this stuff isn't always that impressive, to be fair. There are a few full cutscenes, but your character is a classic mute RPG protagonist, and most of the dialogue is done through basic text, the old text box technique, and characters just standing somewhere. It's functional, but pretty bare bones compared to the presentation in a lot of other modern RPGs. The game is just really unusual in that most of the main quests are pretty flat and simple, go here and get that sort of things. Rarely does a main quest even directly force you into a fight. Most of the combat in this game is incidental to exploring rather than a driving force of the story. It's not like Monster Hunter where every main quest is to hunt a new monster. It's more like you're going somewhere and there just so happens to be a monster in your way. Side quests can be a little more complex with multiple possible outcomes depending on what you decide to do. This game never gives you a Bethesda-style drop-down list of choices. The things you do are entirely up to you, and it's both liberating and potentially frustrating depending on exactly how you jive with it. For an example of what I'm talking about, there's a quest called Hunt for the Jadeite Orb, where a guy had this orb stolen from him. He had an orb, and somebody took the orb. There's two guys who want it, and you could just find the orb and hand it over to either of them if you want. But if you really want to resolve the quest in the best way, you go to the local item forger and get a duplicate made of the orb, and you give the crappy one to the jerk and the real one to the nice guy, and you get a better reward. None of how this plays out is signposted or explained other than the general quest area where these guys appear. Beyond that, it just leaves you up to figure this stuff out, and when you do, it feels awesome. I really like knowing that everybody is satisfied with their orb. Even though one of the orbs is clearly inferior, they don't know that, and I don't have to stick around to find out if anybody gets orb regret. I just move right on. The game does have a few systems to help you out, though, like the pawns, for example, who, depending on their experience, may be able to guide you during a certain quest. But that usually just boils down to taking you to a specific place, and I mean, that's it. This can be extremely helpful during certain quests, don't get me wrong, but they're not going to explain any fine details of anything for you. There's also an oracle who's about equally as helpful, and And when I say that, what I mean is not that helpful. On the subject of pawns, yes, they're better than they were in the first game. And yes, they don't talk as much. They still talk too much and repeat certain lines a lot. Like, do you really need to point out that same ladder every time I pass by it? I don't think you do. But overall, again, they talk a lot less and act more intelligently in battle. Pawns are what make combat in Dragon's Dogma feel unlike any other RPG. Because you're rolling with a team of 3 AI assistants that can only be given 4 vague commands like come here and help, which might make them sound kind of worthless, but if you built a solid team, they can practically win battles for you. You can obtain pawns from these rift stones. There's one main pawn you design yourself, and then you can bring along 2 guest pawns, which are the ones you obtain by using rift stones and spending in-game currency called rift crystals. Pawns on your own level are always free, but higher level pawns cost more, and depending on your settings, the ones you see in the rift will either be pawns created by other players or pawns created by Capcom. There's a whole lot to talk about here with these things, how they work, what they do, but I'm going to give you the short version here and say that they work. They work really well, actually. And while you'll be swapping out guest pawns a lot because they can't gain experience in your world, finding new and better pawns is always satisfying. Another thing I appreciate is there's surprisingly not that much menu busy work in this game. There's basic crafting, but you're only making a few specific items. There's skills and different jobs to unlock, but those are only accessed at certain vendors. And while there's a lot of different armor and sets of weapons to find, there's no randomization on stats or anything. It's not a loot game. You're only getting so much stuff, and it's a big relief. So most of your time, get this, is spent doing the actual fun parts of an RPG, fighting monsters and exploring the world. There's a lot to explore in this game, too. The world map is very, very large. It's full of little secrets and tons of unique little things, too. They clearly put a lot of effort into making this an enjoyable world just to be in. It's dense without resorting to covering the map in Ubisoft-style icons. So a lot of what you end up doing feels natural because you're the one who found it. You're not just marking objectives off a checklist. You're doing things because you want to do them. At least that's what I assume. Maybe there's something wrong with you. I don't know. But yeah, and there's tons of cool stuff to find. I haven't played a game that rewards your curiosity like this since Elden Ring. Like, there's some really, really crazy stuff tucked away in the corners of this world. And yeah, while you're wandering around, you are going to deal with a pretty constant onslaught of enemies. Mostly some combination of wolves, goblins, bandits, harpies, with a random giant monster thrown in a good measure, like a cyclops or a griffin. The world is just dense with enemies and ambushes, so it can get a little exhausting after a while. I'm not going to say it can't. It'd be a bigger issue if the combat wasn't so damn good. And make no mistake, it's very good. No matter whether you're playing as a warrior, an archer, a thief, a mage, or one of the more exotic hybrid classes, you're going to have a ton of tools to work with. Every class has a few basic attacks, but the many special moves you can unlock really change how your character works. As you rank up your class, you unlock flashier, more over-the-top abilities, and it really works well. One important thing to keep in mind is that if there's one thing this game isn't, it's Dark Souls. There's no dodge button by default and no lock-on, so how you end up playing is pretty fundamentally different. You can climb on top of monsters to stab them or grab their legs and push them over. Everything's fully affected by physics, which can sometimes work out in your favor and sometimes really work against you. Battles can be chaotic and crazy. The terrain you're fighting on can make a huge difference in battle. As you explore and fight monsters, your overall health slowly drains from scratch damage, and the only way to heal it is to rest at an inn or make camp. The addition of camping also makes Dragon's Dogma 2 an obvious pick over the original. You're no longer forced to wander around in the pitch black night, and it doesn't just restore your health without having to take a lengthy trip back to town for an inn. It does other stuff. You got the prerequisite cooking menu, only this time you're cooking real meat. It's such an odd but charming inclusion to make all the cooking cutscenes full motion video, like actual video footage of cooking of meat. It's another way this game is just doing its own thing. And there's a lot of combat because there is a lot of wandering around. There's very few options for fast travel. There are ox carts, which can transport you between major cities. And it's a very rare, expensive stones that can be used to instantly teleport, but that's it. Which means you're going to be doing a lot of hiking, which would be worse, but the world is, it's honestly so beautiful to explore, and the combat is so enjoyable. Having to walk through certain parts multiple times doesn't quite have the sting it does in certain other games. This is a stunning game at times, too. The environments are incredibly detailed overall, and at any given moment, you'll be at a grand vista that's hard not to just stop and stare at for a while. I'm playing it on PS5, and while the visuals are excellent for the console, the frame rate isn't quite there. If you're on the wilderness, it mostly stays above 30, but in certain dense areas like the main city, the frame rate's going to tank. I wish the game had some kind of performance mode to make up for this, but it doesn't. If you want 60 frames per second, Dragon's Dogma 2, it's not going to be on console. That's not happening. That's not how you're going to get it. You got to get it on PC. But I'll also say that the 30 frames per second didn't really bother me. It didn't hurt the experience of playing it. At the very least, the performance is a lot better than the original game on Xbox 360. Now that game, that was a chugger. As someone who's usually pretty sensitive about games that aren't 60 frames per second, this one really wasn't so bad. It might be that I've played the original a lot, and this feels a lot like the original, except for it doesn't crap out the way that the original did all the time. And like there's some games that target 30 frames per second that feel like they're in slow motion or underwater. This game feels really responsive at that frame rate, so it's pretty tolerable, at least to me. I haven't seen any bugs. Like, I don't love that frame rate, but man, not one bug so far. That's amazing for how complex this game is. I've definitely seen a lot of oddness, like certain enemies barely hanging off a ledge, or NPCs shuffling into place, or awkwardly facing the wrong direction to talk during a quest or something, but that doesn't mean it's not working right. That's just a little bit of that jank. I kind of expected that. Bugs and jank are different things. And there were parts of the game where I thought maybe like a trigger was missing, maybe a real bug, but wrong. That was just me being dumb. I'm just so used to RPGs hand-holding you through quests that when a game makes me figure it out, it feels wrong, which I guess is kind of really sad, actually. But it's also, it makes me really happy that this game trusts me. I don't know. There's something about that that makes me like it more, even though it might be a little bit more frustrating. I do think that is going to cause some people not necessarily to jive with the game. It does expect a lot out of you. Like I said, I like that, but not everybody is going to. Many things are they're not explained, or just expect you to experiment to figure it out. And the actual main plot isn't super interesting, at least at first. It eventually goes to some pretty wild places, but that first dozen or so hours, there's not a really large amount of attempt of getting you invested. It's one of those games that's so confident in what it is that it doesn't even try to rope in new players. And to me, that's just, it's so good. The lack of tutorials, the straightforward opening, the unmarked secrets, open-ended quests. It expects a lot from the player. It trusts the player to be able to do those things. And if you're willing to go with it, there's a whole lot of fun to be had here. They did not dumb it down to capture a wider audience. It's a game that's unlike almost every other open world game out there. And while there are some boring and awkward moments, it's overall a game that I would highly recommend to anybody who loved the original or wants an open world game that's a little less formulaic than we normally get. It's frustrating and it is confusing at times, but it's the good kind of frustrating and confusing. The kind that keeps you coming boring and awkward moments. It's overall a game that I would highly recommend to anybody who loved the original or wants an open world game that's a little less formulaic than we normally get. It's frustrating and it is confusing at times, but it's the good kind of frustrating and confusing. The kind that keeps you coming back for more because when you figure it out, you're like, thank you, Capcom, for letting me do it. I did it. Thank you. It's an excellent game overall. But what the hell's going on with the generic fantasy music over the title screen? What the hell is that? I don't understand that. Maybe you do? Leave a comment. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.
Dragon's Dogma 2 offers a